Fratelli the Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast. Fratelli the Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on Fratelli the Rugby Podcast. Today I am joined with Josh, as Ottavio unfortunately couldn't make it. We will be doing a podcast discussing the franchises and both Derby Day 1 and Derby Day 2 later on this week. So obviously just keep in touch with us on that, and we'll let you know when that's going to come out. Today, what we're going to focus on is with the recent news of the 100-day review, which the president, Duodo, has completed. I think it was on the 24th of December, just before Christmas. There has been some movement with regards to, what's being discussed with Zebre and maybe some of reasons as to why. And these are, topics that have come up a lot over the past sort of 3, 4, 5. I think we first said it sort of 6 weeks ago that this was likely to happen, and we are getting inundated by some of the people just interested in Italian rugby. So today I am joined by Josh. Some of you guys might know him as Lupo, who is an avid, I think it's fair to say, Zebre fan. We have spoken for years, haven't we, mate? Yeah, I know. Just a couple of shirts in the background there. Really set out your stall this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we've been speaking for years now, mate. Obviously, dark days of Italian rugby, moving into these glimmer of lights to maybe some oddly timed decisions. I think it's fair to say. What are your thoughts on everything that's going on at the moment, mate?
As an Italian fan or a Zebre fan?
Let's go Italian fan first, because I think you probably have some harsher words as a Zebre fan, to be honest.
I have many harsh words as a Zebre fan. As an Italian fan, things are looking positive in general. I mean, we have young players coming up through both franchises and abroad.
Yep.
I mean, you have players. Quickly think of players abroad. You got Otombina, who's just had his first debut in the top 14.
Yep.
It's great after some promising performances in the Challenge Cup.
Out to that as well. I think our boy Ottavio has been doing some videos on some of the players playing outside. So check out his YouTube channel if you guys haven't, if you're interested in finding out sort of what those players have been doing. So ciao Ottavio, good to see you on here, mates. And I just mentioned that we're probably going to have a session later on this week at some point. Sorry, go on, mate.
So things really looking good as an Italian fan. Players performing well abroad. Benetton have sort of steered the ship a bit from where they were going. At the expense of us, questionably.
Well, it's an interesting point, that, right? Because some people with, maybe slightly longer memories would have remembered a time where Benetton were the ones who were under pressure and Zebre were, thriving under Bradley. And
2021.
Yeah, so it just goes to show, how quickly fortunes can change. And I think, Zebre have just been unfortunate that they've been in a period of sustained growth and potentially, some poor decisions post that 2021 with regards to how they were planning on, first of all, recruiting players with the budget that they have, and secondly, maybe some naivety with regards to how they should be managing the talent coming in from Italy. So one thing I would want to sort of give kudos to the administration is saying, Zebre should have focused on the young talented youth, and now it's starting to pay dividends. So It's an interesting point you raised there, and I think it's a really valid point. Like maybe not at the expense of Zebre, but certainly
I say that more as tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
we
for
lost
sure.
both games, but
yeah, for sure. But like again, really valid points, and again, like something really important to highlight, right? As like you said, an avid Zebre fan. I've known you for years now. I think it's quite fair to say maybe some of the newer listeners, we've got plenty of South African listeners who probably weren't interested in URC and don't really know too much of the history post was it 2022 when they joined? It's now 2 seasons, isn't it? So
we've had 3 seasons, 3 seasons, 3 different winners.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, 2022 season is the right year. But what I'll say is that maybe some people it escaped. So yeah, go ahead, mate.
So, but as a Zebre fan, things are, well, I mean, including our title, isn't it? We're on the brink of going one way or another. Things are looking positive for us. These players who we took on 20, 21 years old are now 50 caps in, 24, 25, really performing well this season alone. You look at the game against the Lions, Lyon, both Benetton games, Cardiff to a point. These are games that were winnable, and we were in positions to win. Maybe not so much Cardiff because we were always fighting back that one, but
yeah, I think that again really bad. Certainly Lyon and the Lions, ironically. Yeah, I mean winnable games. Again, just exactly the Benetton match. Certainly the first match, the second one in the fight the whole time, and this isn't a casual performance that Zebre are putting out. Like we highlighted very early on, right, what changes were likely to happen, and I think Rosselli probably doesn't get the kudos he deserves because he had the balls to make tough decisions and play young players, frankly probably knowing that it's going to be a tough day at the office against some of the larger URC teams with the bigger rosters and the bigger budget. But like you said, these players then understood how to start game manage, and maybe some of the mistakes that they made, some of the naivety that they had as youngsters, they're developing and it's starting to show. And again, like you said, a decision either way or a small 5% change or 2% change when it comes, like even kicks off the tee, like that makes a massive difference in our sport, particularly at the highest level, which URC is definitely getting up there, right? It makes a massive difference. And like you said, realistically, we could be living in a world where Zebre have 4 wins to their name, 4 URC, well, 3 URC wins, 1 additional win in Europe, and all of a sudden, these discussions that we're hearing.
We're on 2, so it'd be 4 wins, Lions in the first Benetton match, and the Challenge Cup game against Lyon,
and that would take a win away from Benetton, and all of a sudden, it's 4-3 in terms of the wins in the new URC. So interesting. Obviously, we do have some talk points from what was spoken about on the 24th. So for you guys who've joined slightly later, the sort of purpose for this pod tonight, and obviously, like I said, we will do a follow-up with the Zebre Benetton recaps, is to focus on the news of what's happening with Zebre, what's happening with the movement, but predominantly obviously Zebre because it's maybe one of the more pertinent discussion points. So to give some context behind why we're in this position, like every union, we have been projecting some losses. Last year, we projected 9 million euros. This year, it looks like it will be 10 million euros. A lot of it's self-inflicted. Some of it, as every nation will be projecting, was due to the World Cup and lack of some of the games being played in Italy. And some of it just, frankly, some poor business decisions which may have started the new presidential candidate in a deficit. And I mean that, as politically neutral as I possibly can. So we're working on the premise that, we are 19 million over the past 2 years in debt. Obviously, we did factor a lot of that stuff in. CVC obviously has helped, so we're not, in dire straits, but it is something that we do need to try and steady the ship, because it's not something that we could sustain over a long period of time. So that's one of the main drivers for Andrea Duodo's statements with regards to the sustainability of Zebre as a federation entity. I'm obviously quite keen on hearing from you, Josh, with regards to how do you think, do you think Zebre is slightly scapegoated with regards to what's happened in Italy? Do you feel as though, a lot of these decisions probably fall out of, Zebre's realm of control, right? And it definitely feels like it's quite easy to point the blame to a franchise which is on the rise but hasn't really shone as it could have been shining, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, for whatever reason, I mean, I've got plenty of reasons why. Some are self-inflicted thanks to ownership. Some are outside sources. However you want to look at it, it doesn't help. I think the club is used, especially over the past couple of years, as a political key figure with the upcoming elections and everything else of, well, we're going to do this, well, we're going to do that, one's going to do this, just a mess there. Yes, I agree, it's probably a bit of a scapegoat. I mean, especially if you go back, so the comment that was made recently about making the team sustainable, you don't have to go that far back. And if you go with what was reported and what was said at the time when we had Delay in charge, the team was not only sustainable, it was profitable. If you want to take that as face value, then at that point we were one of the only teams really that were profitable. We were in the plus, we weren't in negative. We had a €5 million debt with the FIR and we paid that off in 2 years. So the idea that the club cannot be sustainable, I just find wrong, because we've proved otherwise in recent years.
Yes, again, I think, a lot of people were very excited about Delay coming in, and really, have this smart, high business IQ man in charge of Zebre. And I think a lot of people were very, quite frankly, a little bit shocked when he ended up leaving Zebre. And he made it obviously quite clear his thoughts and the fact that he wanted to complete this project. And like you said, he was, it looked like he was making good tracks, but this, I suppose, goes back to some interesting business decisions by the federation, right?
Yeah. I mean, we went from a board of directors to a sole director having Delay, and he was in charge. However, he wasn't. For whatever reason, decisions he would want to make weren't approved. And other individuals' decisions were, this is the way the club must run. That's
politics in Italy.
Yeah.
So what you suggesting? Politics in Italy?
Potentially, like everything else.
Doesn't sound like Italy. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The whole purpose of having a single person CEO to make decisions, not having to reply to the board, is because for the exact reason they were trying to get rid of bureaucracy, it ended up being more bureaucratic for some reason. So anyway,
then we reverted back to the board of directors.
Funny
We've
that.
had recent elections. We've had recent elections, and as well as I do, we saw a little post online and thinking, this be maybe a new governance
just
involved, maybe potentially, maybe.
yeah, it's just
hopefully, but
it
that's
is that's Italian rugby to a T. Unfortunately, it's not something that we haven't seen before, right? So, so just going back onto the talk points, I think the thought process here is they're currently contributing around 7 million, and they're looking to bring it in line with what they're currently offering Benetton, which is 4.8. So they want a joint partnership. It looks like the decision whether it's going to stay in Zebre or not will be made regardless on February 7th. But we have had an open request for tender, and they're looking to maintain at all times, without any question, 2 teams in URC, 2 Italian teams in URC, which is an absolute non-negotiable, which is good.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that tender's gone out. It was reported then that any decisions and such will be made in private. So we don't particularly know. We don't know who's bid. We don't know who's interested. We've heard reports of who's interested. I mean, people brought up the Petrarca bid in 2019. Nothing official come out since then, apart from Petrarca aren't interested in joining the URC anymore. Okay. There's reports that our main sponsor, Amaretti, they're interested in buying the club, taking it on.
Valo Rugby as well was an interesting party, apparently.
Valo Rugby, the crazy president, apparently, the cowboy president. Cowboy president is Rocca. He's like any good Italian man.
Love the Spur. So you're absolutely right. There's obviously the issue with having it behind closed doors. We lose that element of transparency, and also, it doesn't benefit the federation, because I think actually just increases the level of speculation, which ironically is what we're doing now, right? But in lieu of having that information and being transparent, this is what we have to do. Obviously, there was some interesting stuff that did come out from Eduardo's interview. It looks like he is maybe hinting at a few areas, if there were to be a change, where we could potentially find ourselves potentially going to as a second franchise. I will park that for now, because I do think one thing that we need to be really cognizant of the fact is this is financially driven, right? Which means if there is someone who is in the Parma area who is willing to, like you say, put the money in, the requirements, which are, I think, 5 million euros a year, which would be matched by the federation over the course of 6 years, and have a stadium of 5,000, which I actually, this is why I wanted to highlight this. I think we're probably going to struggle some of the areas that were highlighted to find a stadium ready for 2026 season with 5,000 seats at URC level.
2025 season, it's in 6 months, 9 months.
We're going to struggle, right? I think what we're looking at here is potentially a best case scenario of someone who is from the area, so there's low impact to the players, to their families, to the coaches, to the staff, who is willing to open up the purse string a little bit, and have a team represent Parma, and quite frankly, fans like yourself, fans like S03X14, who have been unreal, possibly some of the best fans in URC, like to particularly in the dark days. What are your thoughts in terms of like the likelihood of it staying in Parma first, and then secondly, like, what do you think the impact it would be to like the city and stuff in terms of rugby not having that elite pathway up to the highest level? Because one point I think we really need to focus on is the players who have grown up watching the club are now of an age where they can represent the club, right? So
Yeah,
I would love to hear your thoughts, mate.
I mean, that's a point that I've raised with you in private before. These people need to remember that the club is only professionals for the past 10 years, 12 years. It's not that old. However, you have these kids who are growing up, the players who have grown up. This started really with Matza when he made a comment saying, Zebre is my childhood club and I will play for them. And that's the sort of thing that people need to really remember, is that the club is growing and kids are growing up now watching the team and supporting the team. And even though our attendance figures are the lowest in the URC, there's no getting around that. They are growing ever so slightly. Well, they are growing year and year and year, an extra 100, an extra 150. And this is during a time where we're not doing well. We're not winning games. We're not doing this, and they're still showing up. They're still growing.
Yeah, I agree. And also the level of investment that they're putting in to try and make it a more attractive proposition to the fans is quite clear, right? First of all, new speaker system. You can hear that they absolutely love that. They've been love using it this season. And it's one of those where it feels like you said, they're moving in the right direction. They're trying to make it as compelling as they can. And also, one thing that we need to understand, for those of you guys who don't really follow Italian rugby, is the demographic of the people who are interested in rugby is very different than it is in the UK. Obviously, there's still going to be people who are 35 to 50-year-olds who've grown up with it, and they're probably going to be a large proportion of it. But in Italy, the vast majority of the people who go to the stadiums are families with young kids. You'll see kids everywhere. So you'll see a lot of the time in Italy, quite family orientated stuff to do. And Parma are no exception to that. Zebre have definitely been trying to up their game on that and trying to bring in that side, just to make it a more attractive proposition to spend, a Saturday evening, Friday evening.
I remember
Sunday,
when
whatever it is.
I remember when I went to a match in 2016. I went to watch when we won against the Dragons, one of the last games of the season, if not the last game, if I remember right. And then one more recent times I've gone, which was when we played the Cheetahs last season in the Challenge Cup, and it's louder. There's more going on. The environment's better. It's more of a whole day of it. It was still great before. I enjoyed and love every minute, every time I go and see them. However, what it is now is so much more.
I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. It is so much more. And like I said, it's clear that they've been investing in it. You can't question that. So let's quickly go back to what was said. So it looks like, with this money that's going to be saved, there's going to be a big focus on grassroots and attracting more young players and prioritizing, the community rugby. I think we're also probably going to see the under 23 academies for both Parma and Treviso, regardless of outcome, are probably going to be closed, and we're going to reutilize those resources into the previous Stephen Aboud model of Italian rugby. Ironically enough, actually, a person who was overseeing this with Stephen Aboud, Franco Zione, has now actually been, I suppose, re-promoted to high-level sports director. So he's obviously now going to probably align to what we previously had, and have this really fantastic. And I think it's fair for us to sort of be quite proud of our age grade stuff. So we're looking to really sort of go back to what we have been doing in terms of bringing in those quality players, which have shown us the likes of Manoncello, Lamaro, like Fischetti, like all of these players that are currently playing at a very high level have come through this model. So we know it works, and it's good that we're going to sort of revisit that. And the other point, which I thought was quite interesting, is we are looking to re-engage, right, the movement with a cultural engagement. So I think what we're trying to do there, again, is maybe just really embrace the fact that we are a family-orientated game in Italy, and I think we're probably going to try and sort of really tailor some of the technical developments to that, based on what Eduardo was saying.
Yeah.
Now I think it's probably a fair time to go over the sort of the speculation that Eduardo threw. And I was quite honest with you before you came on. I'm going to, talk quite candidly about the advocate side. I think, like I said, best case for everyone is Zebre stay in Parma. They find, a healthy investor or a new owner, ideally. And, they get the money that they deserve to compete with some of the best teams in the world, frankly, right? URC is probably the best league in the world. So what we need to do...
French who disagree with that, but...
for sure. There's going to be one or two Frenchmen. But with the money that is spent in the URC, it's probably the best standard of rugby in the world. I'll rephrase it. Right?
Let's go with it.
We're never going to get up to like the 30-40 millions of Toulouse, unfortunately.
Look at Leinster. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? Leinster's completely homegrown, right? So obviously, with regards to the locations that were highlighted, they spoke about Rome, they spoke about Milan, they spoke about obviously Parma, they spoke about Padova, which we weren't surprised about. So first of all, I think it's quite easy to look at Padova and be like, okay, well, that's sort of the easy option, right? They have a stadium. They have they have people in Veneto that are interested in rugby because Treviso's down the road. So like it's quite like an easy option for them just to sort of
self-proclaimed rugby hub of Italy.
Right. What I will say is, like, each area has its own benefits, and obviously we've already spoken about Zebre remaining in Parma and the inherent benefits there. The infrastructure's there, the investment's been happening. They're starting to build a solid fan base of young
clubs are connected to it,
right? And it makes the most sense, right? Let's be honest, it makes the most sense. But then also, I think, if I'm playing devil's advocate from an economic standpoint, Milan, as an example, used to have a high population of rugby before obviously it got, let's say, dismantled by the professional game. But Amatori Milano have always been a very, very esteemed team in Italy, regardless of their current stature in the leagues. And there's a bit of history there as well as it being an economic hub for Italy, right? So that would make sense. And then obviously there's
Devil's advocate. I'll just jump in. Devil's advocate. I'll go with your frame of mind.
Yeah.
As a club for Zebre and its history, because the club is over 50 years old.
Yeah.
First game was in Milan. The team was born in Milan and then moved to Parma and set up home in Parma. So you want to play on history, moving the club back to Milan. It's a bit like the club going home. I also don't think if it goes back to Milan, it will keep the Zebre name. It will keep because it's part of its history.
Yeah.
It's
a talk point. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's almost like you can talk. It's a story that you can tell there, right? Like, which is it's marketable. I 100% agree with you. So again, this is being completely sort of bit of an advocate here, but and then obviously there's Rome, which has a large player pool, obviously produces a large amount of the Italian internationals, and is the capital of Italy and doesn't have realistically an elite pathway, but has two Italian teams in Serie A elite. But then obviously the negative side. So in Rome, as far as I'm aware, and I would love for people to educate me if I'm wrong. As far as I'm aware, there's not really any stadiums ready for a team to pick up a season next year that have 5,000 seat stadium, which is at URC standard. So it can't just be like a stadium of concrete seats. And then obviously Milan, similar situation. It's an infrastructure issue. There's obviously not, again, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, there's not really a 5,000 seat stadium which would be at URC standard that, you know, could slot. So again, question is, right, infrastructure wise, which are the two logical places? One is Parma, right? Keep it where it is, put money in it. The other one, again, will fall into Padova because they have Petrarca have a stadium already ready to play. So my question to you is, right, and like you said, it's quite clear that we know what the best option is, but if, you know, Milan or Roma are in a position to, how do you see that playing out? Because quite frankly, I'm at a loss. Are they going to share ground whilst they're looking to fix stuff up?
That's the only thing I can think it being. It will be a ground share for the foreseeable future, because, like you, I don't think there's a stadium there that's ready for it. Even we brought up the one about Petrarca and their stadium. From my knowledge, that needs renovation as well. The only one that's ready is the one currently in use at the Cittadella de Rugby. So I don't know what the best. I mean, of course, unless they build the stadium during the off season.
So Sean said, unless they build the stadium during the off season. Hey, Sean, unless it's some sort of Minecraft-esque stadium, mate, I think we're going to be waiting a while. Unfortunately,
it'd be like the American houses where it all comes in just slats, just like build your own house, build your own stadia.
That's it. We're gonna have like shipping containers just going around just to sell the stadium. Hey, listen, like, I think it's one of those, right? So if the infrastructure is there and it's something that, like you said, needs renovating obviously doesn't mean sort of full construction. Fine. There could be, there could very well be, but is it likely to happen from February 7th when the decision is made to probably mid-October? Like, let's be honest, we're talking 8 months. Even if you're willing to throw money at it, I don't think it's going to be something where we're going to be able to do that. So I think there's one here. So there's questions come in. Is there land near the Olimpico to build a small stadium around there? So there's, I think it's the Tre Fontane, which is a stadium that Rome play in, which is a 4,000 seat rugby stadium, right? It's what's played there. However, I don't think it has cover first, which I think is a requirement. So it needs to have
stands.
Yeah, stand cover. And I think the second point to that is, I think it's 4,000 capacity with concrete seats, right? So as in no plastic seats to sit on, which again I think is a requirement. What I will say though is there's nothing stopping having a Bath-esque, you know, at the Rec with the temporary stands for, you know, 17 million years. There's nothing us doing something like that if needs be. But again, you know, if we want something ready for the 25-26 season, I'm at a loss, to be honest.
So right, I'm just having a look at it now. What the rest of the 5,000 seats, sufficient financial budgets, commitment to loan, blah 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 blah.
Actually, this is a good point, right? So what Lupo is speaking about there is the requirements for the purchaser. So what we're saying here is we need to have at least 5 million euros over a 6-year period. We need to have at least 5,000 seats. We need to, and it has to be stands, right? Is that what you're looking at now?
The sale will include requirements such as a stadium with at least 5,000 seats, a sufficient financial budget. This is off Rugby Pass, so I know it's not everything.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to wean
Yeah,
through all
yeah.
this.
So whilst Luke was looking that up, basically what we're looking at is sustainable infrastructure for the future, and that's where the conversation I feel falls short in some of these people. Okay, well, this is an interesting one, right? So if the new franchise will be in Rome, can the Flaminio be reused?
No.
So the Flaminio apparently is a bit derelict at the moment. It's been obviously not used for a period of time, and it's deemed as unsafe. That said, Ottavio actually mentioned this the other day that Lazio have proposed a bid, I suppose, to have a stadium inside a stadium and basically re-renovate the Flaminio to its former glory, but also have it so that it's something that they can use for the football week in, week out, and have, you know, their own designated home within Rome. If that is the case, again, I think the best case scenario would be to have a stadium share, because we can't afford to buy a stadium. Like as a even if the federation had that money liquid, I don't think they would invest that money in a stadium. Just outright.
We're on about, I think it was 23 million liquid assets, or that.
Yeah, we could never afford it. We could never afford it. Like realistically, to buy a stadium of that magnitude, we're talking probably in, you know, common money, probably like 100 million now, and renovate it. We just don't have that.
I mean, Lazio's bid on it, if I remember right. That's going to take a few years to
2027 apparently.
Yeah, so it's going to take, what's that?
Yeah, at least 2 years.
At least 2 years to get that done, and this needs to be done by September, October 2025. So
yeah. So we've got another point here. It could be that the firm invests 5 million a year in a stadium improvement investment, operate on the matched budget by the new owner, sponsorship for a couple of seasons. So basically, what we're saying here is 5 million a year plus, you know, matched budget from the owner. So we're talking 10 million, and then the sponsorship, because obviously one thing that we haven't highlighted is right now Zebre is currently fully owned by the federation, which means that all sponsorship is also going to the federation, which is going to be interesting to see how that might change under privatization, because these are in place for a period of time. So for example, Amaretti's for 3 years, right? So we've done, I think it's the second year. So that's due to be renewed next year if they're looking to renew it. So the point here could be, right, let's say they have a good some good time with sponsorship, and obviously they're going to get some money from the URC for you know, viewing rights, etc. Realistically, we could be talking, you know, 8 million a year, and probably still be operating under that proposed 5 million a year for a small period of time whilst they build out a stadium. I will be honest, I still don't think that's enough. I just don't see even it would take 10 years at that sort of level, like investing 8 million a year, I think. But on I suppose on a smaller stadium, I was thinking specifically about Flaminio there, but if I take that out of my head, on a smaller stadium, it probably take too long anyway. So again, it would be probably a stadium share with some sort of football team, and then on top of that, it would be the reinvestment. So then we'd have to fork out money for the stadium, and then obviously the stadium redevelopment, rent, and then obviously all of the associated costs. I don't see it happening, unfortunately.
No.
But it is a really good idea. If it was something where maybe the government or local government could potentially help facilitate that. So if Milan are like really, you know, keen on having Zebre in Milan, then maybe if they could fork out some money and make it happen, then yeah, why not? Why not? Right.
I mean, it's a great idea. As we've seen with what was planned for Minigo and their development, things are all planned. Well, say they're planned, and then they go absolutely peaked on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like it's one of those where even if even if you have it verbal, it's nothing
Yeah.
happens until it's in writing, right? So it's a good idea, like you said, in theory, but in practice, will it happen? Probably not, right? So Phantom, hello mate. So Phantom says Lazio Rugby should be promoted to the URC. If that means we get to see Albanese in the
Yeah.
URC, cool. Uh, as long as we get to see him play
Should
again,
have guessed
fine.
he would have brought something like that out.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Again, mate. We're back to the point where I don't think that there is enough infrastructure in Rome, or modernized infrastructure in Rome to support that, unfortunately. But again, don't think beggars can't be choosers. Is the point? Sean. So Sean put, look at Ospreys. They shared a stadium with Swansea FC. Yes, they did. Yeah, they did. Obviously, that could work. But again, I think in Italy, there's a lot more. In Wales, both are almost considered like national sports. In Italy, like football trumps everything, and if there's a risk of damaging the pitch, like from scrums or whatever, it can get quite bitchy quite quickly. I think that's probably fair to say. So I don't see a stadium share for like a large football team work, potentially for like a Serie B team who have like a decent stadium, or even maybe one of those which had been set up in like the 1960s, from a team that was once in like Serie A, like maybe like a 30,000 seat old school, maybe needs some renovation. That might work, but I just don't see it, unfortunately.
A question's got to raise is on about Stadia, if the team does move outside of Parma, what will the FIR do with the Cittadella? Because they manage that, they run that.
So I have actually thought about this. So I think probably what will happen is they'll have a center of formation in Parma, which would make sense, right? Or have it as like the hub for the centers of formation. And then I think they'll probably sell off the assets. Whether they would reinvest that in another location, or they put that on the owner of the new privatized franchise, I don't know. I could see them probably just being like, no, it's ours, and just sort of like forcing whoever has bought it to invest money and make life a little bit more difficult that way. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's been so much money invested. It's not. It's not going to go away, right? So I think they'll probably just sell the assets if needs be, and like I said, make a center of formation.
Yeah, it just seems daft.
It
seems to have to invest so much money in everything that's been going on there. The redevelopment of the whole stadium, everything else, the VIP section that was done not overly long ago, and it's just
it's odd timing for sure. So already been talked about as a serious possibility that a fur-controlled Zebre will only have a budget of around 5 million. So yeah, if there was a ground to improve public interest investment, I mean, in an ideal world, like let's be really, really honest. In an ideal world, the people who wanted Zebre Parma to stay in Parma would be willing to own the club. Like, in an ideal world, if we had the money, we could say, okay, us as the fans, right? We want to see it stay in Zebre, it stay in Parma. We have, instead of having it what's the word I'm looking for? A season ticket holder. We all own part of the club. It means that we all have
German football approach.
Yeah, exactly like that. That's the exact approach that I was thinking about as well. Having it so that would be brilliant. And it's one of those where, like, if we could do that, then great. But is there enough interest to do that? Is there enough money to do that? Probably not, unfortunately. Okay, so here we go. For reference, Connect Sport ground redeveloped into a top-class 12,000 seat capacity plus corporate facilities is costing around 40 million in Ireland. Of course, there is already a stadium in Parma. That's true. That's true. So they didn't have to buy the land and stuff. That is really true. But that's the problem, mate. We're not the Irish Federation who earn 3 times as much of us from the Six Nations revenue. We just don't have that money. And also the quantity of quantity of fans that come to the Irish games, it just dwarfs ours. Partly because, again, like we've siloed a lot of the rugby viewership into pockets of Italy, but also it's one of those where it's a big old country, Italy, and it's hard to traverse from Rome to Treviso like easily, right? It just doesn't make too much sense. So and then we've got rugby coach Otto. Rome doesn't have the requirements for the stadium at the moment. Yeah, that's one of those where we were talking about. It'd be interesting to see how that progresses, Otto. Obviously, I'll speak to you offline on this, but we were talking about potentially. I think it's called Le Tre Fontane is a stadium. I'm not 100% sure, so that might be something.
Let's have a look.
Right. So, and then obviously there's just Otto replying to Federico there. I hope the businessman from around Parma will join forces. Yeah, 100%. So something similar to what happened with Saracens, right? Saracens got sold to almost like a conglomerate of ex-rugby players and local businesses and stuff when they started to struggle. That would be a perfect example as well, right? Have actual, have some of the big boys, right? Just invest money and keep the rugby in the club for sure.
It's not an uncommon thing. I think Biarritz in France, they did something recently. It was a couple of years ago, I think, where a bunch of players ended up buying the club, or they were in talks to buy the club.
Yeah,
it's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah, I get that. Here we go. So Otto's actually replied. Otto, do you know what the capacity is for the stadium? Is it 4,000? Am I right on that? Apparently they won the Scudetto in 2000 as well. Wow. So I'm just going to quickly have a quick look at my notes, but I think, right now, I think we've hit quite a lot of the points that we wanted to talk on Zebre. There was some other stuff that we probably wanted to look at, which is, first of all, Six Nation tickets sales. Apparently already 110,000 tickets sold, which potentially could help with the investment into a franchise if the federation are willing again to put money into it to try and get this off the ground. And also I think we're going to have, he mentioned that there's not going to be a change, long-term goals with regards to coaching. He's very happy with Gonzalo, and he's very invested in the 2027 World Cup goal, which is good. But I think we probably have touched on everything I wanted to mention. Obviously, I'm going to leave the floor to you, mate. Is there anything that you want to speak directly to the people who are listening, people who, maybe don't necessarily know what it means to be a Parma fan? So, yeah, is there anything leaving you with the final thoughts?
Well, so I've supported the team from day one. I supported it only before it because it's the closest to. It was based in Viadana. It was close enough to Emilia Romagna that I was support them. Then the team came to Emilia Romagna. It's my region, my family's region. I pray that the team doesn't leave there. I don't know what to say. I love the club. I've loved them from day one. So it's a really difficult time. I mean, there was one bit I did want to point on, is that with all this talk of potential buyers here, there, everywhere, well, not quite, but so many potential buyers, it's what the other has pointed out is that they are, if none of the bids come in that the FIR are happy with, they are willing and prepared to keep 100% control of the club. And that was gone from a footnote to now this recent 100-day review and stating that outright. So it's a really strange time to be in going forward. We have no idea what's going to happen.
Not only that, just to tack onto that point as well, he said they're willing to, but also reduce the funds by 2 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, which is what we used to run on anyway.
Yeah. So for context, for those of you guys who don't follow Italian rugby, it would probably mean some cuts, right? And Zebre are at the point now where they're competing because of the investment. So it's definitely a step backwards, right? Let's call a duck, right?
Yeah.
Right now, Zebre are competing because of what they've been able to produce on the field because of the investment. So it would mean some tough decisions. And also it probably mean that some of the young talents that we're really excited about probably won't be playing for Parma. They might have to go back into the Serie A Elite, which is, again, retrograde. So that's also a tough proposition in my eyes. Just have it so that they're in control.
Interesting one going forward. I mean, we know the academies are going. That was set when he went for the election. He was going to remove both academies. As you pointed out to me earlier, the academy costs about 600,000 a year, minus the players, however much. I don't know. Say for the players in the academy, it's between 100 to 200,000. So say out of the 2 million cut, nearly half of that, 2/5 to half of that is going to be from the academy and those academy-based players. So they're going to go back to the Serie A Elite. Is that the worst thing? Potentially not.
No, but I do think, and this is something where we've always had the issue, and we still have an issue, is it's all good producing fantastic players at age grade, but if we're not helping them develop and take the next step, we're always struggling. And I think maybe there's a discussion to be had that we should have closer ties to England and France that have much larger leagues, and potentially we should be paying the salaries for the players to allow them to play abroad, right? Maybe that's something that we can do and have again, like a max exodus to the S-Sports as an example. The Georgian model, right? Because let's be honest, our age grade talent's good, it's really good, or at least it has been good. So the problem there lies is, the money that we're saving from the under 23 academies, ultimately that's going to get reinvested into the elite pathway, again, having, those centers of formation, which is great. The model works. We know it works. But how do we get them players that are coming out, the Gallerini, like all of those young players that have been coming out, to get game time?
My question is on that one then. So we're going back to the centers of formation.
Yeah.
How is that going to look? Because beforehand, we had the under-20 team playing in the Serie A, and they were playing all together. That isn't going to happen this time. The team, what I can see is the players will be playing in the Serie A Elite. They'll be called up to play under-23 like they have been. There's been a few matches, and it will go that route. They'll be in constant contact, things like that. If we go back to the permit player system, which we've already started to do, we could in theory run a 40 squad team, which is thin. It's very thin. But if we have access to permit players, we can bulk that out. Like we've called up Bertuccini, and whenever he's played phenomenally well. When we've played Locatelli, he's played phenomenally well.
Yeah.
It can work. It's going to be difficult, and we're going to be gritting our teeth a bit, especially if injuries pick up. Look at Pani. Pani missing has been It's not been horrendous because we had Fratelli, who is a real key figure and can really slot in at 15.
I think you win a couple of the close games with a couple of key players in the team. Like that's the truth.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about it, we're talking, you know, small margins, right? And having players that improve the team, whether it's drastically or slightly, right, make a massive difference between winning and losing. And I think, you know, if we're being really honest with ourselves, there's probably some like cumulative mistakes, not you know, blaming, like cumulative mistakes from a team which may or may not have happened. We don't know, but like it's small margins. This at this level. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually coming up to an hour. And we've been speaking basically a lot about Zebre. What I'm going to ask you guys, a massive favor, those of you guys who are on YouTube, if you guys don't mind just, you know, giving it a like and maybe, you know, a comment or a share if there's any questions in any of your chats with regards to what's happening with Zebre, just because it helps us out massively. It's just, you know, a few of us that do this, and it makes the world a difference. So appreciate all your support. Other than that, we have all the socials. We have Fratelli di Rugby on Twitter, which some of you guys might be watching. Please follow, please like. We've got, you know, the podcast on Spotify. Please share, please like, give us a decent rating, hopefully. And yeah, you know, if there's anything else that you guys want to know or want to discuss, please put it in the comments, because like I said, Otto and I will be doing a follow-up just to speak about the franchise derbies. So this may be something that we can you know, incorporate into a podcast later on this week. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, just want to say thank you very much for joining us. Ciao ragazzi, buonanotte.
Ciao.
Fratelli the Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast. Fratelli the Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast. The Italian Rugby Podcast.